let's keep it real. Most people who are charged with a crime are guilty. How can you represent people that are guilty? If you're unable to do that, you really shouldn't be a defense attorney.
Jaime Santana, a New York-based criminal defense and personal injury attorney.
I tell people there's three types of clients. There's the guilty client who says, yo, Santana, I did it. Just get me the best deal possible. I know what I did. And then there's the innocent client who's 100% innocent. And then there's the client who knows they're guilty, but they want to act as if they're innocent. They're just completely unrealistic. They're delusional, and they think because they pay you, no matter how much money it is, they think all of a sudden you become a magician.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors podcast. You already know REAL stands for Real Examples Altering Lives. Today, I have an esteemed guest with me who's also a personal friend, longtime associate, and a Bronx native, Mr. Jaime Santana, a New York-based criminal defense and personal injury attorney who has also served as a judge. So we're going to get right into it today. Jaime, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. It is quite remarkable how we got here today, but let's talk about you, and then we'll probably get into that conversation later. So you're a Bronx native, correct?
Yep. 100%.
Born and raised?
Born and raised, proud of it.
Yeah, we spent some time in the clubs together when we were younger and hanging out.
We did.
You know, it's crazy how things come full circle. What are you doing with yourself these days? Tell our audience what kind of law you practice, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So I run my own practice, Santana Law Firm, specializing in primarily criminal defense. And then we do a lot of high-profile civil rights cases. So a lot of your police brutality cases, a lot of police shootings you see, we do that, wrongful death cases. And we do a lot of prison cases as well. And then we do PI, personal injury, and accident cases. Those are primarily the four areas I specialize in.
Now, you started, if I'm not mistaken, in the criminal defense world.
Yeah.
Coming out of school, is that something that you sought to do, or was it your early days as a DA that attracted you to that?
No. So it's interesting. So coming out of law school, I became a prosecutor at the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. I knew immediately it just was not for me. It wasn't feeding me. There was a lot of bureaucracy involved in it. And I said, I need to move on. At the time, I had become a father as well. So I said, I need to make more money to keep it real. And I said, you know what, I'm going to start my own practice. And that's what I did. I started my own practice. I took a chance on myself. And that's how the Santana Law Firm started. The first office was in the Bronx, right in the area where I grew up. I figured this is where my base is, my people, my resources, and that's how it started. Yeah.
Now, you've always stayed true to your Bronx and your Puerto Rican upbringing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about growing up. How'd you grow up? You have a mom, a dad? Where'd you grow up exactly in the Bronx?
Yeah. So right in the Castle Hill section of the Bronx, Olmsted and Lacombe.
Okay.
In fact, we still have the home there. So now my dad lives there with his my sister and my niece and my nephew and brother-in-law. But in any event, some may say it was a typical Puerto Rican house, man. I mean, we had, I think at one point I counted like between 9 and 12 family members. Bro, no joke, living in one house under one roof. Right. But you know what, back then...
And not a big house.
It was a single family home. We had about, it was a modest house. It had 3 levels, right? And on each level there were different families, bro. I think back, I don't know how we did it, but we did it. Right. And sure, we had our moments, but for the most part, we made it work. There were cousins around all the time. Grandma and grandpa there present. They would whip you back into shape if you were out of line. My parents are there. That's how I grew up.
So you had this sense of community from early on, instilled in you through your family, your upbringing, and just having all of those different, family members in the house. Right. How does that contribute to your decision to become an attorney? Is that something you always wanted to do from young, or is something that developed along the way?
I actually just had this conversation with my mom the other day, and she reminded me, she said, Papi, she said, I remember when you were around 12, 13 years old telling me you wanted to become an attorney. I actually thought I didn't decide on becoming an attorney until a few years later, but she reminded me, and I said, oh, wow, you know what, you're right. So I was around 12, 13 years old, and, went through high school. I think maybe there may have been like a debate team or something like that in high school. But that kind of idea of becoming an attorney stayed within me. And then I went on to college, and I think it was during college where I really decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I came close to pursuing acting.
Right, I remember.
Yeah, you remember, right?
Yeah.
I came close, but I was like, oh, what if it doesn't work out? And what am I going to go to LA and do what? I said, let me become an attorney.
Right.
And so that's what I did. That's how it ended up happening for me.
All right, so we still got dreams of becoming an actor, or what?
It never dies, man.
You still got the looks, man. And you still got it. We were saying, if it weren't for the gray hairs, bro, I wouldn't know you were my age.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. It never dies, man. I absolutely love acting.
All right, well, let's see if by the end of the show we can convince him to get back into what his heart is calling him to do. Even if it's just a hobby, I think we owe it to ourselves to lean into the things that we love. Yeah. So you find somewhat manifested this from 12, even though you didn't remember far back. Mom always remembers these things. So shout out to Mom. Right. Then you get your itch for it. But when's the moment, or who's the person, or when did you know that, all right, this is what I want to be? Did you have a mentor that kind of held your hand and inspired you?
I didn't have a mentor back then. I didn't have a mentor. But what I had was enough discipline to stick with it. So, I allowed myself to allow the idea to go from an idea to actually pursuing it, actively. So, of course, I knew, okay, I had to finish high school, go to college, go to law school. But I remember being in college and watching the O.J. Simpson trial.
Okay.
And for me, that was a case, obviously very high-profile case. That was probably the only criminal case at the time I was watching on television from beginning to end.
Yeah, you and everybody else.
Right. And so I remember watching the roles. I remember watching the roles for the prosecutors, and I remember watching the criminal defense attorneys. And I found it fascinating for me, not so much because it was O.J. Simpson, I was part of it, obviously, but because of the roles these individuals, these attorneys were playing, and the judges. Right. It's like, this is actually amazing. Right. A lot at stake, high-pressure roles. Right. This is something that I want to do. But it was interesting because upon graduating from law school, or actually when I was about to graduate from law school, I actually had no interest in becoming either a prosecutor or criminal defense attorney. I was looking to become an attorney in the sports and entertainment industry.
Okay.
Until I participated in this trial techniques course, and there were actual attorneys sort of acting as judges. And one approached me. He liked my style. He said, I think you're phenomenal. He said, let me take you out to lunch. So he takes me out to lunch. He happened to be this very well-known Wall Street, high-profile personal injury attorney. Took me out to lunch, and he says, I'm interested in offering you a job upon graduating from law school. He said, but you will not see the courtroom for the first 2, maybe 3 years of your career at my office. And I didn't like that idea. And he said, you know what? If you're looking to become an actual litigator and be thrown into the courtroom immediately, you should become a prosecutor. That's how I became a prosecutor. So I gave up the opportunity of maybe starting out back then, this was 2000, of maybe making, maybe $250,000 a year, which, at that time, you know what I'm saying? And so I passed on that opportunity, and I went and became a prosecutor. I started at $34,000 a year, bro.
But you were getting the juice.
But I was getting the juice, and I knew it was a sacrifice. It was a stepping stone, and it worked in terms of really gaining that valuable experience to become the best attorney I can be, and that's being a defense attorney today. Right. And so, I don't regret.
So,
that
would
decision.
you equate that higher paying position that you declined as going further into school, and this lower paying prosecutor's job being like, all right, we're throwing you into the fire and you're just going to learn on the fly?
Yeah, that's what it was. So, you become a prosecutor, you're immediately on this sort of like a training mode for, I think it's like maybe 3 months. And they're just training you. They're training you. You're learning about the law. Because it's one thing to have studied it in law school, and now you're actually practicing it. Totally different. So you're learning the law. You're learning how to think as a prosecutor, how to react as an attorney in court. You're dealing with judge, you're dealing with defense attorneys, you're dealing with the jury, your client, people you're representing, which are victims essentially, and you really, really hone your skills, man. And you get to a point where you say, I can take on anything.
Right.
So for me, I reached that point after paying my dues at the DA's office, and I said, I'm ready to become a defense attorney, man. Right. And so that's the confidence that you gain when being trained as a prosecutor. You can take on any case when you're done.
Now, where was your original jurisdiction as a DA?
Brooklyn.
You were in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I was in Brooklyn.
Have you ever served in the Bronx? Just curious.
As a prosecutor?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I've handled tons of cases as a defense attorney, but not as a prosecutor.
But you set up shop in the Bronx, staying true to your roots.
Right.
Now, I'm sure along the way, even in your young days, you saw some interesting cases, to say the least. Anything that stand out early in your career, or a case that really made you or changed the trajectory or really got you excited, or just something that stands out from early in your career?
Yeah, so for me, I would probably have to say the first homicide case I took on as a defense attorney. That was the first time I said to myself, I'm really doing this thing. Like I'm literally handling a murder case. Someone died. And that toys with you somewhat morally, because someone died, someone lost a family member. And then legally speaking, someone has come to you to represent them. They're coming to you, they're putting their faith and their trust in you and your skills and ability as an attorney. That's when I really said to myself, okay, I'm doing this thing. Like this is what I've been training for. This is as serious as it gets in terms of the type of charge. And then from that moment on, I just started doing a ton of them. But then throughout my career, I switched gears and I started to take on a lot of these civil rights cases. So it went from just defending people to trying to hold people, maybe such as an officer who acted wrongfully, trying to hold them accountable. That started to do something for me as an attorney in terms of what I'm fighting for.
Right.
People toss around the term justice, just justice. And I tell people, and for some cases, it's really not about justice. On the criminal side, it's not about justice. It's about what the DA's office can prove or not prove. That's the reality of the situation, because we know there are innocent people who can be convicted, or there are guilty people who can be found not guilty. Right. So it's not about, truth in that or justice per se. It's about what can be proven or not. But on the civil end, it's about accountability. So if I'm representing a family member or members who just lost a loved one, there's no amount of justice, so to speak, that's going to bring that loved one back. Right. But what I am pursuing for them is accountability. So maybe we're suing NYPD or another entity. At that point, it's about accountability. So I enjoy, seeking that and pursuing that for family members.
Now, you brought up something interesting, because you've been on both sides of the aisle as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, and we'll also circle back to the civil rights attorney stuff that you've done. But have you ever had like a moral conundrum in terms of representing some of the people that you have, on the criminal side? Because there are probably some people that were guilty. Mm-hmm. Maybe you serviced them. I don't know. How does attorney, because I know your character, but how does an attorney deal with that? Because it's not an easy road to walk, I would imagine.
It's not. And I'm often asked, hey, Jamie, how can you represent people that are guilty? The first thing I say is, look, not everyone who's charged with a crime is guilty. But let's keep it real. Statistically, most people who are charged with a crime are guilty.
Is there a statistic specific to that?
I don't know of a statistic.
But it's the majority.
But I'm only going by cases that I've handled. And the evidence speaks for itself, right? Like I could look at a videotape or go over audio or something like that. That's you with the gun in your hand shooting someone. You know what I mean? So when I say statistically, I mean the majority of the cases that I've handled, and also me speaking to colleagues, they all say the same thing. Right. And so when you ask, is it difficult? It is difficult at times in terms of finding that balance between making sure your client understands you're all in for him or her versus, reality. Because some clients, they're just completely unrealistic.
Right. And delusional.
They're delusional, and they think because they pay you, no matter how much money it is, they think all of a sudden you become a magician.
And you're innocent.
And you're innocent.
Your innocence.
I tell people there's three types of clients. There's the guilty client who says, yo, Santana, I did it. Just get me the best deal possible. I know what I did, right? And then there's the innocent client who's 100% innocent, right? And then there's the client who knows they're guilty, but they want to act as if they're innocent. And when they don't get what they want, they're pointing the finger at you as an attorney, at the system, at the judge, at the prosecutor. That's where it becomes very, very frustrating, man. And that's when you gotta kind of like say, okay, I know what I'm doing here. Don't take this personal. You're representing the client and their rights per se. You try not to attach your personal feelings and beliefs about an individual to the case, because if you're unable to do that, you really shouldn't be a defense attorney.
Correct.
That's just the reality of the situation. When I step into a courtroom, I'm before a judge or jury, it's game on. It's game on. I'm not questioning you morally in terms of what you did or didn't do. You've come to me. You've put your trust in me. You've paid me. I'm going to give you 300%.
Right. And I'm here to do a job.
I'm here to do a job. I'm here to do a job. But let's keep it real. If you know you're guilty, there's only but so much I can do with the evidence.
Right.
So if you're the guy or girl on video shooting and killing someone, there's a chance the jury's going to find you guilty. Right. I can't do anything with that.
And that's where it comes down to the defendant being realistic or being that first client, which says, yo, I'm guilty, but get me the best deal that you can.
Right.
So, that speaks to life, too, in general. There's people who take accountability, and then there's people who blame. And having done time myself, I realized that so many of the brothers that are in there are caught in the cycle of blame.
Yeah.
There is no responsibility taken for not even the crime they've committed, but just their actions as a person from day-to-day living. Like, you've ended up in this position because of choices and decisions you've made throughout your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then ultimately it landed you in here. But, I mean, there are some people that prison becomes the light bulb or the wake-up call. I just had a young man on here a couple weeks ago that told an amazing story of redemption. Yeah. And he needed to get locked up not once but twice before he found that light. Right. Some brothers, unfortunately, never will. Have you seen repeat offenders or any clients that have come to you more than once, or it's just coming to me now? Have you ever had a client that you've defended, gotten off, and then found themselves back in trouble at a later date?
Oh yeah. You see it. You see it all the time. And they add, value, if you want to call it that, or validity rather, to the recidivism. It's like, all right, you messed up and you didn't learn your lesson. Now, I never judge individuals. People come back to me, hey, Santana, I messed up. I need you again. Okay, no problem. But I do look at my clients as more than just a case, as more than just a name on a piece of paper. As frustrating as it may be sometimes, I genuinely look to help these clients, to facilitate a different process and outcome for them. So I talk to clients, especially the younger ones. I talk to them as if, they're my own children. And I say, listen, this is not the life you want. You've been given another opportunity to do better for yourself. Do that. Pursue greatness. You don't have to be a part of this life because, look, I get it. Some people, they've come from a life or background where they feel they can't escape. And I'm not passing judgment. Like, whatever you believe, that's your business.
Reality, right?
It's your reality, right? But then there are those who do have opportunities to kind of move away from that life. And at some point, you become old enough, right, and wise enough to know right from wrong. To know, let me not go that route.
Right. Do I want to do another fucking 3-year bit?
Right. And then I tell people, every time you get in trouble, it gets worse. Right. You pick up your first felony, okay, fine. You pick up your second felony, now you're a predicate felon. So it's going to go up in terms of your exposure, in terms of prison time. You pick up a third, now you're called a persistent felon. And it just goes up and up and up and up. And I tell people, this is not the life you want to live.
At some point, I believe, 3 violence, you can be facing 25.
You're looking at serious time.
You're a menace to society, essentially.
Now, on the other side of the coin, I've had plenty of success stories where they did what they did, they served their time, they've come out, and they've turned their lives around completely. They've built successful businesses, right? Wonderful families. I keep in touch with some of them, and they routinely will reach out, Santana, man, I just want to thank you. You got me a great deal back then. Or maybe you got me into a program, or maybe I filed the right motion and we beat a hearing or something like that, and they dodged the bullet, so to speak. Different circumstances for different people. But those success stories, I really love.
Who's your favorite?
It's a beautiful thing.
Favorite success story? Ex-client.
Damn, man, I've had so many.
Give me one.
I've had so many. I would have to go with probably an individual. And this story, I always think about this case. This story hits home for a lot of us. So growing up, obviously, for many people, smoking weed was a thing, right? The law has changed, right? What a lot of people don't realize is that if you are smoking weed, you get into a vehicle and you get into an accident, God forbid, and you kill someone. This is what happened with a client of mine. You now will be charged with vehicular manslaughter or homicide, rather. A lot of people are not aware of this because unlike DWI, where you blow into a breathalyzer machine, they check your BAC level, boom, they know how intoxicated you are or not, right? Science hasn't caught up to that with respect to marijuana. So in terms of success story, I don't want to say success on a polished level, but I'll say success in terms of the legalities and the training that went into this case. My client was charged with doing exactly that. He was driving a car. His girlfriend, unfortunately, was killed in the car. And they subsequently charged him with vehicular homicide, and because they later on determined that he had marijuana in his bloodstream.
So he blew clean.
So
in terms of no alcohol.
Yeah, I think he was in a coma, and they checked his blood. I don't remember exactly how, but they checked his blood, and they determined that he had marijuana, THC in his system. We went to trial. This trial was about a month long. This was like expert after expert. It was a serious trial. But for me, that was probably one of the most serious cases I had, because the level of expertise that had to go into that case, not only from me, from the prosecutors, but from experts I had to bring into the case, it was so incredibly intense. In the end, he was found not guilty of the vehicular homicide. But for me, and he's out, so what happened was the judge was so pissed off. My guy was already, I think, on probation for, I forget why. The judge was so pissed off that he was found not guilty. The judge violated him on a very small probation issue. So if you're on probation, you pick up a case, if you get arrested, irrespective as to your innocence or guilt, it's considered a contact. It's considered a violation, right?
Yeah.
The judge was pissed because he got off, violated him, put him in. I then later on found out that on appeal, I don't do appeals, it was reversed. So he's out now. He's turned his life around in terms of, I highly doubt he even smokes weed anymore. But it was a wake-up call. But the reason I call that a success story is because it was the kind of case that could happen to anyone today. There's people smoking weed and they have no idea.
And you're technically still not supposed to smoke while under the influence.
And you're not supposed to smoke. You're not supposed to smoke.
Meanwhile, I cannot remember a time where we grew up and everybody wasn't smoking in the car when it was illegal.
Yes, man.
It's part of the culture, unfortunately.
Yes. So when you ask me about success stories, there's different levels of success. I can give you another one. You're a father, I'm a father. I don't do many family court cases, but I have in the past. I was representing his dad one time who he had two kids. One of the children were still under 18, so it was a custody battle. We went to trial. The mother was really trying to take the child away from the father, who was the better parent, the parent that was more than just present. He was deeply involved in his daughter's life. We went to trial, and it was an intense trial. And you know what? We were victorious in the end, man. I stopped the mother from taking the daughter away from him. She was trying to leave the jurisdiction, put an end to that. And we got the judge to rule in our favor, and the father was able to gain custody of his daughter. The mother was not a good mom. And, statistically, most of the time the judges award custody to the mother based on my experience.
Pretty much, I would say in the 95, 98, 99% of the time.
Not in this case.
You have to be, and I always say this, you can't say you're an attorney, you're much more polished than I am, as you should be. But I always say, in order for a mother to lose custody, she's got to be really fucked up.
She's got to be.
She's got to be going through some drugs,
extraordinary circumstances,
extraordinary trauma.
Yes,
it's just not a person who's together, because almost always they'll find in favor of the mom. And I know because my mom was a social worker who had to appear in court for these things all the time.
Right. And the mother wasn't necessarily a drug addict or an alcoholic, but she was sort of an absentee mom. She wasn't present. She was prioritizing the boyfriend over the daughter. And I was
Story
like,
we hear all the
yeah,
time.
man. I was like, no. We're going to fight this thing. We're going to fight this thing to the death. And we did. And that was just a great outcome for me, man. Because I'm a dad.
Kudos too, because I mean, just common sense. It's not a male, female, husband, wife. This is the better parent, as you put it.
Yeah.
And not only one, but two children would have been affected,
right.
And then the generations that follow that, would also be affected.
Right.
So,
and it's not even the kind of case I would have normally taken on, man. But he came to me and he says, "Please, Santana, I need you. I need you." And you know, something told me just take his case. Right. I took the case, man, and just for the guy to be able to continue to be a dad, that meant the world to him. That meant the world to me. Right. It was a great thing, man. Yeah.
So those are those instances where you get fulfillment out of out of what you do.
Yeah.
And at a point in your career, you actually became a judge as well, which we spoke about.
Yeah.
Tell the audience a little bit about how that came about, because, I mean, even me, I haven't seen you in about 5 or 6 years, and when I saw that you were a judge, I was like, holy shit, my man really, made it. Like, I don't know too many judges. I know plenty of attorneys, but I don't know many judges or attorneys who have become, judges. So how'd that come about?
So I left the Bronx at the time. I had just become a father. Moved up to Orange County. You and I, born and raised in the Bronx, right? So we wanted to go from a concrete jungle, so to speak, to being able to have a different life for at least our children, right? And so that's what I did. And so while I was up there, the opportunity presented itself. Now I had no aspirations of becoming a judge whatsoever at the time, but when I was presented with the opportunity, I said, Jamie, this is not about you. I told myself, look beyond this. I had the opportunity to become the first Latino judge in Orange County.
And probably one of the youngest as well.
And one of the youngest. I think I was 34 years old.
Yeah, and regardless of ethnicity, I would imagine that's probably, if not the youngest, one of the youngest.
Absolutely. I mean, we're used to seeing these judges, much older judges. Whiter judges, right? Certainly not Latino judges. And I said to myself, this is more than just me. And so I did that. I accepted the opportunity, and one of the just most amazing and proud moments for me throughout my entire career was watching my kids watch me be sworn in as a judge.
Wow.
And I said to myself, now this is what it's about. This is amazing. If nothing else, just that moment was enough for me. Right. And so I took my oath and I took the bench. And I was able to put myself in a position where now I was actually able to make a difference. So instead of prosecuting and or defending, I was now being impartial. I was the person in the middle, being fair and impartial with respect to the manner in which I was judging. So I wasn't the judge that would just make assumptions, a judge, or throw people in jail. No, I was come up to my bench.
Right.
Let's look at your record. Oh, okay, you're committing crime after crime after crime. Oh, I get it. You've never had an opportunity to be put in a drug program. And so every crime you're committing is to feed your drug habit. Don't worry about it. Put this young man or young woman in a drug program. And then months later, those same people would come into my courtroom and say, Judge Santana, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I've turned my life around. Right. I'm in a program now. Or the parents would come up to me and thank me. Sean, I was the type of judge, if you walked into my courtroom and you were a young man and you came in with your pants sagging, hat backwards, no, time out. I would pause, take them into my chambers, and I would say, young man, let me ask you a question. Do you understand the importance of what it means to have pride and respect for yourself? Right. Remember, a lot of these young men, in particular young men, right, they don't have people at home to have these types of conversations with them. And so they see this Spanish judge on the bench. It's an opportunity for me to make a difference. And I would say, listen, you may leave these chambers now and say, screw Judge Santana. Or you may say, let me listen to what he has to say. Let me let it resonate. And I would say things like, listen, take pride in who you are, man. When you're walking outside, I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but the reality is we are being judged by what we look like, how we're acting, what we're saying, right, to a certain extent. Right. And I would say carry yourself with dignity, with respect. Pick your jeans up. Pick your head up. Walk with pride at all times. That's the kind of judge I was. Right. So it wasn't about putting the robe on, sitting behind a bench, thinking I'm the big judge. That didn't mean anything to me. Right. It was about, was I able to truly make a difference?
Right.
And
this is 16 years ago. So have there been any other appointments that have been diverse up there in Orange County that you've kept tabs on, or were you that like one-off guy?
Actually, shortly thereafter, a colleague of mine, she became a judge, and I remember her telling me, I wanted to be the first Latino judge in Orange County. You took that from me. But yeah, she became a judge as well. I'm not too sure or certain about the makeup now.
Right.
But I know there was at least.
Listen, if there was one right after that, then there's probably chances that there were more after that too.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of opening up doors, man. And that's what was most impressive to me, because I knew you were an attorney. I knew you had done the acting thing early on when we were hanging out. But to hear that you had become a judge is fucking huge. Huge. So thank you for that. And I think a lot of it is compassion, right? So you're a kid from the Bronx, Puerto Rican. You grew up in their family structure. And you get it, because even though you maybe had a better family upbringing and a safer space than some of your friends or, people in the neighborhood, you get it.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like family members or, people close to you that were just maybe career knuckleheads or people that got in trouble with the law?
Of course.
Right.
Of course. It hits home. That's the reality of the situation. Sometimes there are just those dynamics that exist in family structures that present those sort of, outcomes, whether it's on a criminal level or, some other level where you say to yourself, oh, yeah, this person's a knucklehead.
Right. And some people are criminals. And what you see is, now I think in New York City, we'll use as an example, it's shifted so far, the pendulum, because there was so many people getting railroaded or, in my opinion, just not getting justice, proper justice. I mean, I've done time, and the makeup of the prison is not the makeup of the state.
Right.
It skews heavily black and brown. I'm sure there's plenty of white people committing crimes, but they're also maybe getting better representation, maybe getting a slap on the wrist. Right. I don't know. But when you get to prison, it doesn't look like the streets. That's for sure. So you represent Latinos, you represent the Bronx, you represent the second chance for a lot of people. I've talked about it on the show before. People don't realize how expensive it is to put somebody in jail for a year. Yeah. So any of my colleagues, particularly white colleagues that I've come across over the years who are very harsh when we have a conversation about crime, I'm like, Joe, do you know how much it costs to lock somebody up every year? No idea, but we can't just let them do whatever. I'm like, well, you're always complaining about your taxes being too high or the government not doing the right thing. A big part of that is incarceration. Mm-hmm. At the time I was locked up, it was 30-something thousand. I would imagine it's 40-something, 50-something $1,000 a year to educate somebody.
Yeah.
State school is $25,000 a year if you live out of state. What are your thoughts on what's going on now? The pendulum has swung, in my opinion, a little to the extreme where people are getting out that maybe shouldn't get out. Right. But I understand, again, just understand, coming from where I come from, why this is happening. And I'm hoping that we find some medium where common sense comes back into play somewhere in the future, because I think it's just too far. We'll say left. I hate the left and right fucking shit. But we'll say it's too far left before it was too far right. Hopefully we can find some common sense, prosecution and common sense sentencing at some point. What are some of the alternatives that you would recommend to incarceration? You just mentioned a drug program. What are maybe some of the other things that you've seen work firsthand as an alternative to incarceration for, and let me be clear, a not dangerous, non-violent offender?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's critical for us to address is the fact that there are a lot of individuals suffering with mental health issues. So I think we have to look at the root of some of the problems. So is it a mental health issue? Is it a financial issue? Is this person being abused? There's so many things to consider, but in terms of what I've seen work, like I have a client right now, for example, this is literally a case that's pending right now, who is charged with a gun crime. He's charged with criminal possession of a weapon. I am fighting to get him into a program. Some jurisdictions, meaning district attorney's offices, they have some what they call gun diversion programs where they'll allow you to do the program. Upon successfully completing the program, you can walk away with, because possession of a gun is a felony, you can walk away with a misdemeanor, a violation. In some instances, they'll dismiss your case outright. Now, my client, his first offense, he's a college student. He's done an internship. For all intents and purposes, he made one bad decision. Right? Carrying a firearm, he shouldn't have been carrying a firearm. Okay? And if he's allowed to enter this program, it's going to change the trajectory of his life, right? Because he's not going to be labeled as a felon if presumably they dismiss the case. What is that going to do? Now he's going to be able to get maybe a different type of job, certain licenses, things of that nature. So when you ask me what has worked, I think things like that. Different types of programs. So if it's the person has a drug problem, let's address the drug problem so that the drug problem now, I don't want to say disappears, but that maybe it's managed first, and then we can work on eliminating the drug problem so that they're not, becoming part of that recidivism rate.
Right.
You touched on, just to circle back a little bit, you touched on, some people saying, well, they're letting people out. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. So in 2020, January of 2020, the New York State changed the laws with respect to bail reform, right? So now they have qualified and unqualified crimes. It wasn't so that people can just be let out. That's not what it's about. It was about addressing and correcting this thing we call the criminalization of poverty. So what was happening was you would have two individuals, let's just say presumably a person of color on one side and a Caucasian individual on the other side, right? You would have two individuals who were charged with the same crime, but one was able to afford bail routinely and the other one wasn't. And it could have been a very small offense, like the stealing of a book bag, something like that, right? Which may bring the case of Khalif Browder to mind.
Yep, that's what I was thinking about when you said it.
And so you have individuals such as Khalif Browder who cannot afford, a relatively small amount of bail, exactly, versus an individual who can afford the bail and is now out. And so what would happen is that individual who can afford the bail, such as Khalif Browder, you stay in, what happens? He was in solitary confinement and so forth and so on. He's finally released, he commits suicide, right? So it's a domino effect that was happening over and over and over again. And the criminal justice system needed to address that. Right. So they came out with the bail reform laws. And so now they changed. They created this qualified versus unqualified crime. So it's not every crime you get to get out on. It's if it's a serious enough crime, you're not going anywhere. Or the judge is going to be able to set cash bail. But they've created alternatives. Cash bail, you can put up a percentage of it now. You can use, there's a whole bunch of ways. Obviously, bail bond is always an option.
Right.
So a lot of people aren't aware of this. They're only going by what they see either on the news. Social media. And I tell people that's not how.
I mean, what you see on the internet is not always fucking fact.
Right. Now, there are some instances where even I say, yeah, that person shouldn't have been on the street.
Right. I got one instance I used, there was this young man that was at a McDonald's, and there was this other group of guys, it was a Hispanic group of kids and their girlfriends or some girls they were with and the black kid, and he had a book bag, and they got into a fist fight and the Hispanic kids were hitting the guy. And then the dude just calmly takes it and walks over to his book bag and pulls out a fucking hatchet and just starts going ham on the counters and the fucking, again, the whole shit played out like these guys hit him first for whatever reason. I don't know if he was hitting on the girl, but the dude pulled an axe out and just started chopping the tables apart. And obviously he was in some presence of mind to not kill anybody or hurt anybody. He scared the shit out of him. And the dude was on the street the next day, shirt off, like just wilding out. And that one stands out to me because it's like, all right, there was a presence of mind to not kill anybody. He could have. He scared the shit out of him. They hit him first, so they assaulted him. He didn't even throw a punch back. So again, there's that argument. But then you see him on the street the next day, and it was almost obvious that there was something not right with him. So either way, all right, maybe he didn't get convicted criminally, but shouldn't we address the problem that maybe he's not mentally stable to be out? Again, I don't know, but like you said, it's the glorification and taking one instance that you see and then being like, well, the whole system's fucked up because of this one incident.
Right.
But, if you look at things from a global scale, I'm sure they're not as doom and gloom as the one story that we all tend to latch on, which kind of tugs at the emotions of whatever you tend to believe. And that's why in today's climate with politics, I always tell people of color, I'm like, since when did we start trusting the government to do the right thing by us? Like, how are we now on one side or the other and just dismissing anybody who believes anything else? And that usually gets a reaction one way or the other.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people are like, you know what? I haven't thought of it that way. You're right.
It's frustrating, man. You know, I even hate the fact that we have labels, you know, Democrat, Republican, conservative. I tell people, listen, man, we're all people. You vote for whoever you want to vote for.
Right.
I think all these labels in society, it creates these polarizing dynamics, man. And instead of bringing us together, it separates us. You know, believe what you believe, but it's about maintaining respect for each other, right? And the other thing is I tell people, no one's coming to save you.
Right.
Like, who are you waiting on?
Right.
No one's coming to save you.
Right.
Stop blaming it on this politician, this president, this, you know, the system. No one's coming to save you.
Right. Look in the mirror. Whoever that person staring back at you is, and however they identify, that's your solution right there.
Exactly.
It's your only solution.
Exactly.
But there's not a blueprint. And much of, you know, the aim of the show here and much of what it seems the aim of your career has been was to lay a blueprint. So you're a kid from the Bronx, Puerto Rican and proud, brown, and compassionate, most importantly, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
So how important is it to lay the foundation, and what can we do, and how can we continue to inspire the next generation, mentor the next generation, and then, you know, what are some of the things maybe you've done in the community? Because I know you've been involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beyond just the legal.
Absolutely. So laying the foundation is critical. I think it starts at home to some extent. You know, we all have different dynamics that we, you know, existed in our homes, right? But for me, it did start at home. Right? If I was out of line, you know, we had plenty of family members to check us, to check
at all times. There was an authority figure in the house.
Exactly. And then you start to get older and you start to realize, okay, right from wrong, and you hopefully you maintain some level of discipline, right? And it happens at different stages for different people, and that's totally fine. But then, you know, to answer your question in terms of what type of foundation you need and giving back and what do we need. One of the things we need is we need to be honest with each other. We need to hold each other accountable. So it's not about me being a yes guy and just telling you what I believe you want to hear. We got to hold each other accountable. So, you know, as brothers in life, right? Like you and I are blessed to know each other outside of this space right now. Right. But the average person out there in the street, the average dudes running around in the street, they're not really holding each other accountable, or females. They're not. And so what do we need? We need leaders in our community who are not just saying they're leaders, but they're really digging deep and they're becoming embedded in their community. They're practicing what they preach. They're giving back, trying to do so in ways that's really going to not only be effective, but it's going to resonate, have long-term effects on individuals. So what do? I routinely go to schools and speak to students. I love to mentor. That's my way of giving back, letting people, the young ones, see if I can do it, you can do it as well, because that's a big part of it. They don't believe they can.
Right.
And so, you know, we when we have that opportunity, we need to do that. We got to step it up in that respect.
Yeah, I always say belief is paramount to everything else. Because if you don't believe you can do something, even if you have no idea how you're going to do it,
right,
you got no shot.
Yeah.
Absolutely no shot. So in the back of your head, and I love, it kills me because everybody has a fucking idea.
Yeah.
Yo, I was thinking I want to do this, and then now that I'm doing okay, you know, I run into people from my past, and they're like, bro, yeah, I want to do this thing, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I wanted to do a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
But you got to actually get started on something, and, you know, we talked about it even with your podcast. You know, you've been dancing around with this idea
I have.
For the longest.
I have.
And unbeknownst to us, we know somebody, shout out to Yarik. Yarik is somebody who you spoke to just yesterday. And we know each other, you and I know Yadik. I didn't know you knew Yadik.
Right.
We had breakfast this morning before the shoot, And you're like, yeah, I was talking to Yadic yesterday because we're in an extended brotherhood. And holy shit, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And he called us like right before we started recording.
Bro. But see, this is what I love, and this is what I need. This is what we all need. Because when I was talking to Yadic yesterday about the podcast, he's like, well, no, we're gonna do this thing right now. He's like, fly out to my house and we just shoot the episode. And I'm saying, holy crap.
Right.
Like
I think what the lesson here is this. You're an accomplished man. I'm an accomplished man. We're both now at a point around the same age, right? I'm 46. You're a little older. You've done this thing and you've done it well.
Thank you, brother.
But there's still something else that's calling you.
100%.
And there's a fear of what's on the other side of this comfortable life that we've created.
Right.
For me, it's coaching and speaking and authors and fucking gracing stages and speaking to thousands of people and inspiring them and going back to communities. I mean, the vision is huge.
Yeah.
And that's why it's scary as fuck. So I just started the podcast, threw some money at it. It was like, all right, come on, let's go shoot and get started. And that's what Yadic was telling you to do.
Yeah.
It's like you being called and in your gut, even though you're established, there's still a fear because you know this world, you don't know that world.
Right.
And you don't know what's on the other side.
And will the fact that I'm going to tap into this other world, will it have a negative effect on my existing world, with clients and whatnot? But, you reach a point in life where you cannot be living based on what others are going to think or not. We have to do what feeds our soul, what feeds our purpose in life, which the ultimate purpose should be, provide a service to others, right? Give back, things of that nature.
But that only comes after you. But it only come after you get your shit together.
Exactly.
And you have a certain comfortability in life.
Exactly.
And providing for the people that rely on you.
Exactly.
Where you can say, all right, I've got enough. Now it's time to go out
to give it. And sometimes, what do? We outthink ourselves.
Oh, every time.
Out of action, right?
Every time.
And what do they say? Plan without action is just an idea, right? Or an action without plan, or an idea, whatever it is they say.
Yeah, I mean, move your fucking feet and it'll start to come together. So I'll give you this piece, and I don't think I shared the whole thing with you, but 2 instances of fear and me having to get over it. And the first one was alcohol, right? I told you I got sober 2.5, 3 years ago. And the biggest fear for me was, I've been drinking since I was 20. I've always had associated drinking and having a good time. It's helped me build my business and network. The hell's my life gonna look like without that?
Right.
So much to your fear of what the hell's my life gonna look like and how's it gonna affect me, I also have the story of me having been locked up. So you didn't even know I was locked up. We go way back. Right. And the reason is because when I came home, the furthest thing that I wanted anybody to know was that I had a criminal record, especially after building a successful business and now being in multiple successful businesses. After 16 years, and ironically enough, it was Raul and the Edge Boot Camp that gave me the confidence to get over the hump, because I was able to share a lot of the shame and the pain that came from all those things. And it wasn't until then that I said, you know what, I made the commitment to go on social media and say, I've been hiding something for a very long time. And I just came out and said it and released the video. And my biggest fear was, I live in suburban, Long Island. I've built relationships here at the gym and around town, and my daughter has friends. And I have neighbors. And I've seen some of my neighbors follow me on social media. People that I don't know, but I know. They live down the block. And I'm like, well, what the fuck are these people going to think of me now? Yeah. And can I tell you that it's been nothing but love for the people that know me. For the people that don't, I don't care what they think. Quite honestly, I'm past that. But again, those were 2 instances where that fear not being real held me back for longer than it had to. So that'll be my push to you to start recording and give that experience that you have, because I think it's so valuable, and you know it. But it's just about getting uncomfortable again, right? But you seem to have a great mindset first and foremost, and you got a great person behind you too. You speak very highly of your wife.
Oh man,
and the team you've created at home.
She's amazing. The whole gang at home, everyone's amazing. They all drive me crazy though, but that's how it is, right?
It's crazy. But it's the hardest thing you ever do.
Yep, man. I tell you, children and the family, they're the greatest teachers in life. Like truthfully, because there's never a dull moment. when you think you have something figured out, you don't have it figured out, and you're constantly managing, multiple emotions in the house, which means you're managing yourself. So you're learning.
I think two daughters.
So at home we have 3 daughters.
3 daughters
at home. 3 daughters at home, and the wife.
You're outnumbered. Do you have a dog?
And the dog is female.
I was just gonna say, at least my dog's a boy.
Shout out to my dog Sadie. Sadie looks up at me. She says, "Man, you already know." She said,
"You're outnumbered, bro."
Dude, I'm outnumbered. I go into my office. I tell my wife sometimes, I'm like, "Babe, you got it." Like, there's certain things that go on with the female dynamic that I'm never going to be capable of handling. We just aren't.
Right.
And like my wife, she's amazing. She says, she just knows how to do it. She just knows how to do it and knows how to handle it. And I'm so thankful for her and for all the family, man.
Yeah, you mentioned it, and I want to hit home and wrap up on that. It's family.
Yeah.
Because I had a single mom who was strong and capable and planted these seeds of hope in me. So even though I didn't have a typical father or mother, I have now created that for myself. Mm-hmm. I don't say break the cycle because, I've broken the cycle. Now I have a family structure that I didn't have growing up. But my mom did the best she could, and she did a damn good job. And I have a unique approach to parenting and fathering and things like that maybe I wouldn't have if I had a mom and dad. But the reason I mention family, because I think as a community, that's what we as Black and brown people are missing. And I think it's easier to blame society and systemic injustice because those things are real. They're very fucking real. But nobody's coming to save us. And I think if this last election points to anything, it's that there's never going to be a day where everybody's just going to say, you know what, we've done all this wrong and we need to help the people we've, kind of kept down for a long time. Right. It's on people like yourself. It's on people like me. And I think furthermore, brother, it's on people like yourself and I to inspire the people around us that we know are capable of doing better.
Bro, you hit it on the head.
So much like you said, it starts in our community.
It does.
And furthermore, it starts in our homes. So let's start figuring out how to be better wives, how to be better husbands,
100%,
fathers, mothers,
all of that,
uncles,
yes,
and role models.
Yeah.
And friends.
Friends, man, that's so deep. And you spoke about breaking a cycle. So I'm this myself and 2 younger siblings. I was the first one in my family to break the cycle, so to speak, in terms of, getting educated, going to college, things of that nature, right? And then I'd like to think I did something right. I'm not by no means a perfect man or father, right? But my son, Julian's, he's in his first year of law school now. My daughter, Jordan, she's going to be going to college come August. She's going to become a plastic surgeon.
Nice.
And then we have our 2 other girls, still living in the house. And I like to think that, we've done the best we can to break that cycle. And so now the hope is they're going to continue that. And it's never perfect, right? We all have our trials and tribulations. We get into arguments, fights, whatever you want to call it. But, you hope that you're passing something on in terms of a legacy, right? So that now they continue that. And so now it's different. It's somewhat ameliorated for now their children to come. And that's what you want. And you want to be able to extend your branches out to friends, right? And creating a brotherhood. We need that, man. We need that so we can uplift ourselves and then pass it on so that we can all become the best version of ourselves that we can be. Never perfect, but what is that best version of ourselves? We're always improving, man. We're in the pursuit of just this greatness, right?
Right.
You don't have to be, great to start, but you do have to start to be great. Yeah. So
it's a great line in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness.
I love that movie, man. That's top 3 for me.
I read that in prison. The book is way better than the movie.
I didn't read, man.
Yeah, the movie's fucking awesome, but the book is even more dynamic.
Bro, I could watch that movie right now and potentially still be brought to tears, man.
Yeah, every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
I just love it, man.
Damn,
I love it.
Fucking Will Smith and slap her around the world. God damn, how the mighty have fallen. But listen, it is what it is. Listen, I want to thank you for coming out today, sharing your story.
You, appreciate it.
I also want you to tell our audience where they can find out more about you and some of the things you're doing.
Sure, absolutely.
And when we're getting that podcast for yourself.
Yeah. Now I know you're gonna hold me accountable. Everybody's gonna hold me accountable.
You got me and Yannick
the
now,
brotherhood.
so no more bullshit.
I know. I love it, and I welcome that, bro. I thank you. Thank you, guys. But in terms of finding me, I'm on all social media platforms at Santana Law Firm. With respect to the office number, 212-448-0055. And if there's anyone out there who has a question you want to ask, feel free to reach out to me, jsantanalawfirm@gmail.com.
And I'll take it even a step further and volunteer you for anybody in the community that needs a great example of success. I'm sure Jamie will be more than happy to dedicate his time.
Absolutely.
If you're in the downstate New York area. My brother, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.
All love.
Appreciate you. Thank you as always for tuning in to another episode of the Real Mentors Podcast. Jamie's information will be in the bio. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.